Churchill's challenge in 1940 was twofold: how to hold together British public opinion, and at the same time, how to persuade the United States to join the battle for Europe. On June the 4th, 1940, he gave perhaps his greatest speech, great because of its dramatic appeal and because of its lyrical, almost poetic cadences, but above all great because of its context. Remember that in the summer of 1940, it was possible, even probable, that a vote taken by the British cabinet would have gone in favour not of war, but of appeasement with Adolf Hitler. Anti-Jewish feeling was common. There was all too great an awareness of how unprepared the country was for war with anyone, let alone with the strongest modern army on the planet. Churchill's speech to the House of Commons that day was, as much as anything else, a preemptive takeover of the cabinet till then and its divided convictions. "We shall not flag or fail," he said. "We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas. We shall fight with growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be." And then, before a stunned and silent House, in Britain's darkest hour, and after a pause, Churchill roared out his defiance. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall never surrender." But there was one more target for the lion's roar. Sitting in the press gallery overlooking the British Parliament was Ed Murrow, head of CBS News in Europe, who had been stationed in London since 1937. Already a celebrity through his regular broadcasts to the United States from the basement of the BBC, Murrow had become an informal friend and advisor to President Roosevelt and enjoyed ready access to and respect from the British Prime Minister, desperate to persuade the United States President to join the war effort against Nazi Germany before it was too late, and no less desperate to rid his own country of the negative influence of the increasingly disliked ambassador, Joseph Kennedy. Kennedy's resignation, by the way, was to coincide with a popularity poll in which the British people rated the United States below Italy in their affection. Below Italy, for goodness sake, and we were at full-on war with the Italians at the time. Most commentators end their quotation of Churchill's immense speech at that point. But what elevates it to a special level is what the great man said next. This was a political preemptive strike twice over. Only too aware of America's isolationist stance, its unwillingness to join a war 4,000 miles away, he not only challenged his cabinet members, but went on to start to preemptively involve the United States in Britain's struggle. "And even if this island were subjugated," he went on, "then our empire, guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until the new world, with all its power and might, steps forward to the rescue and the liberation of the old." Whilst Churchill was looking for support for an ill-prepared Britain, ironically at the same time, the United States faced the same challenge. It was in no better shape itself. It needed a trustee as ambassador, not an adversary. And America, however big and clumsy a bear you may look at times, has a knack of getting it right. And you replaced Kennedy with arguably the greatest and certainly the most loved ambassador to Britain, John Winant. We're talking today about the men who helped Churchill as he tried to lead a reluctant Roosevelt towards a commitment to war. About two talented young men, Winant, the new ambassador, and Averell Harriman, the head of the United States Lend-Lease program. This is the story of how these two joined a third, Ed Murrow, to become the informal bridge between the embattled British leader and the reluctant president, of how they worked successfully to combat the tyranny of distance between the two countries and between their leaders. As a gauge of their impact and influence, let's just look at where they were on December the 7th, 1941, and brace yourselves for a pretty Tony setup. Wynant and Harriman were having dinner with Churchill at Chequers, a great Tudor mansion that is the country retreat of British prime ministers. And Murrow, at the same time, he was in Washington, in the Oval Office at the White House, alone with President Roosevelt. And this day was perhaps to mark the pinnacle of the trio's achievement. It had been a long and grim house party at Chequers, and then a dinner growing grimmer by the hour as Britain's war losses grew. And then Churchill's valet, Sawyers, came quietly into the dining room. "Excuse me, sir." Churchill looked up. "The BBC has just announced that Japan has attacked Pearl Harbor." Churchill, Wynant and Harriman rushed to call Roosevelt and Murrow. In an early draft of his memoirs, Churchill records how they received the news with exultation, nearly dancing for joy. Indeed, according to John Colville, the Prime Minister's secretary, Wynant and Churchill sort of danced around the room together. And that night, Churchill wrote he slept the sleep of the saved. America was in. England would live. The rest was logistics. Churchill once said the secret of his success was KBO, or keep buggering on. Well, in 1941, Britain was still buggering on. But Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, Holland and France had been destroyed. FDR sent him a note, and no Churchill was going to miss the opportunity. "What," he asked the House of Commons in London that day, "what is the answer I shall give this great man, this 3 times elected head of the free world? Here is the answer I shall give President Roosevelt. Put your confidence in us." And then in one of his characteristic, heart-stopping, almost operatic changes of pace, "We shall not falter or fail. We shall not weaken or tire. Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." I could go on. He coined expressions that live with us today: the Battle of Britain, the Battle of Atlantic, the Iron Curtain, just 3. And finally, in the summary of a speaker of speakers, a wordsmith of genius, what of his romantic side? There was never any doubting his love for Clementine, his wife. They wrote to each other often. And which lady amongst you would not keep precious the letter he sent her in 1916? He went to the front in Flanders, knowing he'd probably be killed. Remember, life expectancy then was about 3 months. "Do not grieve for me too much," he wrote. "Death is only an incident. Since I met you, my darling one, I've been happy. If there is anything else, I shall be on the lookout for you. And meanwhile, look forward, feel free, rejoice in life, cherish the children, and guard my memory. God bless you. Goodbye." And she returned that love. She lay her wreath on Winston's grave at the end of it all. Her granddaughter heard her quietly say, "I'll be with you soon, my darling."